Was last night Will Hardy's Portland moment of 2024-25? Has the gauntlet been laid down by the head coach? It's next on Locked on Jazz. Bum 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 pow.
You are Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network. Your team every day.
How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thank you so much for making Locked on Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all podcasting apps, as well as on YouTube. And there is the daily Locked on Jazz newsletter. You got a double edition of Empty the Noggin. Super proud of this newsletter. It is the #1 answer for all NBA newsletters. One stop. Here's what we give you. Your local team favorite, Jazz. If you have another team, you can subscribe to that. And then why would you have another team? 2, it gives you a national article every day from Katie Heindel, except for Thursday. It's from Mike Schreier, who does basketball poetry, does incredible kind of detailed X's and O's breakdown, plus fantasy expert Josh Lloyd, plus all the links to the major stories you need. So it is the ultimate stop. Make sure you grab it. Go to lockedondaily.com and sign up for the Jazz one. We need to catch the Mavericks, and the Kings are tight on our heels, so we cannot have that. All right. Here's what we're doing on today's show. We'll do our Trends Monday. Specifically, we're going to look at the rookies and how they, across the league, are kind of clicking in a little bit. And we'll look at the hot teams and the cold teams in the league and some teams that might have some real problems. We will look at a bunch of items that came through the Kings game and the Clippers game, some of our passing, sacrifices by Lauri Markkanen, 4 things that Will Hardy likes about Isaiah Collier, Kyle Filipowski in the midst of being scouted, and some thoughts on how we evaluate things. But we're going to start today with, did Will Hardy just have his Portland moment of 24-25? Remember, it was last year in Portland on November 22nd. The Jazz had dropped to 4-11. We had gotten blown out in Los Angeles, went to Portland on a back end of a back-to-back, and it was in that press conference that Will Hardy said that if you don't pass and you don't play hard, you don't play. And if you don't give a beep about the name on the front of your jersey, about being a part of the Utah Jazz, you don't play. Animated, heated, laying down the gauntlet. I'm not accepting this press conference. Last night was way calmer, but I think the message was the same. Quote, you have to compete if you want to play. We do not want to coach effort or competitiveness. We'll work on skill. We'll work on systems. We'll work on all those things, but we do not want to coach effort or competitiveness. And maybe the most important line of all, you don't just get to play. That's the line. You don't just get to play. The other lines no, that's the one. If the line in Portland last year was, if you don't play hard and you don't pass, you don't play. If we were making a t-shirt last year, that was the t-shirt. If you're making a t-shirt this year, you don't just get to play. We're developing 7 young guys under the age of 23 and under. That's what the season's about. Getting their skills, getting them to where they need to be. But you don't just get to play. You have to compete if you want to play is part 2. But part 1, you don't just get to play. The full quote was, you don't just get to play. You don't get 30 minutes because you and everyone assumes you're going to get 30 minutes. That's not how the league works. But the message is completely clear. You don't just get to play. And Keyonte George was the one who got that message last night. Cody Williams is the one who got the message the night before. Cody Williams played a career-low 12 minutes in Sacramento, and Keyonte George did not start the second half last night. Isaiah Collier did. And as Will Hardy said, I wasn't happy with Keyonte's defense. He knows I love him, and I believe how much I believe in him. But at times, you have to make changes to reinforce your point. You don't just get to play. This is the struggle of the year for Will Hardy. This is the struggle of teams that are in a developmental stage. If you allow players to just get to play with no ramifications or action of their actions, you end up with terrible habits. You end up with players who will never run back on defense. You end up with players who will never do the little things to win basketball games. Talking with scouts around the league, this is often talked about. Had the conversation the other day on the phone while I was in San Antonio, having a nice time sitting by the pool, talking to a scout who was talking about the fact that he was running through a 32-year-old player who he watches and he still thinks is cursed from the fact that he was on a developmental team in the early parts of his career that were winning 24 games, getting good draft position, and just never as good and as talented as borderline Hall of Fame player, never learned the little things. Never learned the importance of what it means to be on a good team, that when you think you got fouled, you still got to get back defensively. Never, ever understood the value of the little things about your teammates, and is 32 years old and a borderline Hall of Fame player. So Will Hardy may have had his Portland moment this year. It was subtle. It was quieter. It's not going to grab the headlines. Last year was a headline grabber. But this one, to Will Hardy's credit, he's probably given himself some room to do it again if he needs to. He kind of did it in Los Angeles. We had lost by 30 and then we went to Portland on the back end of back-to-back and didn't compete a second straight night, and that's when he went. Last night, the Jazz were down 10-0. They turned the ball over on 3 of their first 4 possessions, and it was 10-0. Then they got it to within 2 or 3. They turned it over on 3 of their next 4 possessions. They were back down 10. The night was over. The Jazz trailed last night against the LA Clippers with about 3 minutes left in the first quarter by 10 until about 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. There are some things in the second half we'll touch on that are positive, that look good, that we're kind of getting back to what the Jazz want to do, that they lost somewhere along the way in Sacramento, frankly. And so they've made a nice flurry, and the flurry has value in the sense that they went back to playing the game the right way and saw dividends for it. I am not a big lover of the down 20 flurry. You kind of will never, ever hear me talk about the down 20 flurry. I think it's, unless it gets over the top of the mountain, it's the other team tightens the ship when they want to. But this was a big moment last night. Keyonte not starting the second half was a big moment. You don't just get to play. You have to compete if you want to play. We don't want to coach effort and competitiveness. The message has been sent. He's done it once. He'll do it again. You come out, take the night casually, you sit down. The only thing a coach has in this league is minutes. And Will Hardy just showed that maybe it's about developing 7 players and giving them an opportunity, but they're going to develop correctly. They're going to develop so that the day when this team is better and has more talent, has more guys, they play the game right. I will give a minor kind of, let's have some understanding. When you go into this league, which is unbelievably great, every night physically overwhelmed, okay, you're on the wrong side of the physical battle every night. You're on the wrong side of the talent battle some of those nights. You're on the wrong side of the experience battle. It's really freaking hard. Really, really hard. And so there are nights where you're dead. Let's have some understanding and compassion to that fact. But if you're Will Hardy and you see it becoming a trend, then you announce you have to compete if you want to play, and you don't just get to play, and you make moves that show that. And that's where we were last night. Will Hardy, a much subtler, calmer, but very similar to November 22nd of a year ago in Portland. 4 things that Will Hardy really likes about Isaiah Collier and why he started the second half instead of Keyonte George, plus what the Jazz did better in the second half, and sacrifices from Lauri Markkanen for the benefit of the team, all coming up as we continue on today's edition of Locked on Jazz. Today's show is brought to you by Murdoch Chevy, located in Woods Cross, also in Logan. The Chevy trucks, the Silverado, the Colorado. It's that time of year. Snow's falling. Maybe it's time to get out of the truck to the garage. Well, the Silverado is the big King Poobah, the Daddy Mac. It's totally awesome. It's driving up higher in the road. It's got the power. It's got the juice. It's got the comfort. You feel like you're in a lazy boy chair. You feel like you're ruling the world. It is awesome. The Colorado's the smaller, zippier truck. There's really nothing quite like a Chevy truck. It is Americana. Plus 80 years plus of the Murdochs in Utah. You get the perfect combination of America and Utah all into one with the Chevy trucks over at Murdoch Chevy, plus the great lineup of SUVs from the Suburban to the Tahoe. It's all at Murdoch Chevy. So please stop by. If you're going to stop by, let's get you the VIP treatment you deserve by being a Locked On everydayer and get you the opportunity to get that treatment over at Murdoch Chevy. Murdoch Chevy, located in Woods Cross and in Logan. Today's show is brought to you by BetterHelp. Convenient, flexible online therapy. Visit betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA. To me, therapy is performance enhancement. The same way that I go to the gym every day, same day I do my yoga so my body works better, same way that I do my reading so my brain works better, same way I try to do everything to get a little bit better. Therapy does the same thing. And if you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. That's big. That's the whole part of BetterHelp that's such a big deal. It's so hard to find a therapist right now. And then if you don't connect and you need to find a new one, it's even harder. And in this case, it's not. So let the gratitude flow with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. BetterHelp. Use your performance enhancement for your brain, your mind, your day-to-day life. Go to visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA for 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Thanks so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. All right. Isaiah Collier gets the start in the second half. And 4 things that Will Hardy really likes about Isaiah Collier. 1, physical defensively. There is more and more pressing. Mike Schreier wrote about this in the Locked On Jazz daily newsletter for his Thursday piece, that there's more pressing going on in the NBA right now than ever before. Collier's a guy who could come in and start picking up 94 feet. Fast enough, quick enough, able to get into guys defensively. He moves the basketball. I don't know why I didn't think that was going to be the case. 1, because at USC, they just didn't move the ball a lot, frankly. 2, I kind of envision a dribble, drive, scoring, highly recruited guard to not be a ball mover. Quite honestly. Like in this day and age, like you're not getting your number 1 McDonald's MVP by moving the basketball. But Isaiah Collier moves the basketball. And he also runs. And he runs with his head up, looking down floor, which incentivizes everybody else to run. The Jazz last year, I wonder if I could pull this stat. I'll try to pull it for tomorrow. There's no way I can pull this off the top of my head. Or pull it while talking to you. Last year, the Jazz were last in the NBA in time to first action. They're not much higher this year. It would be interesting to see when Isaiah Collier is on the floor, whether we're getting into first actions in a cross half court or getting our time possessions faster. It feels like it. We were last in the league last year in time across half court. We were last in the league last year, one of the slowest teams in the league, to time to our first action. Now, some of that's rookie at the helm, trying to figure out what they're doing, how they're going to make plays, what they're going to do. Like, I get it. There's some real understand. You got to you can't just say the stat with a negative connotation. You got to understand why. But Isaiah Collier that's not how he plays. And if you're playing with Isaiah Collier, you're going to want to run because he's going to find you and you get easy buckets. Actually, if you look at Lauri Markkanen this year, and Lauri Markkanen, Will Hardy talked last night about Lauri Markkanen making a bunch of sacrifices for the team because they've changed the style of the way they're playing and what they're doing and making it so that, it's better for the team. And it, in turn, has taken Lauri's shots down, which isn't great. Is if you look at Lauri, his percentage of points via fast break was way down earlier this year and is now finally back up to 11%, which is kind of where he was a year ago. But earlier this year, Lauri was getting nothing off the fast break. So hopefully that'll open up. Lauri right now, his points are very different because he's getting 26% of his points at the free throw line. Lauri's drawing 4.5 fouls a game. What's also interesting about Lauri is and it might be the back, he's just not finishing at the rim. According to Radar 360, he's shooting 39% on layups this year compared to 42% last year. 54% last year. So let me say that again because there's no way you followed that. According to Sports Radar, Lauri's shooting 39% on layups. He was shooting 54% last year. So the Jazz need to just pick up the pace a little bit, and Isaiah Collier seems to be the one who's able to do that. So physical, defensively, moves the ball, dictates the pace, and you're going to run with him. So we'll see how much the Jazz continue. I don't like Keyonte not starting the second half. It's not going to be like Keyonte doesn't start against the Lakers. I'd be stunned. But I did ask Will Hardy before the game the other night if they're trying to move Keyonte off the ball some, and they are. And frankly, Keyonte's efficiency is way up recently. Going into last night's game, he did not have a good game last night in any way. But last night, I think he was shooting 45% or, well, let's be correct. Give me 1 second. I have my notes. Keyonte was shooting 44% from three over the last 6 games after starting the year 8 of 40. So we are seeing Keyonte get much better with a shot, much more comfortable. We're seeing it generally across the board. And that's a little bit of what the Jazz have done. The Jazz have kind of changed the way they're playing, simplified the offense, gotten things a little bit more basic. And that, in turn, has taken the ball out of Lauri's hands and made the Lauri change a little bit of the way he's playing. And that's the sacrifice Lauri's had to make for this team. I said it last night. I'm not a big fan of 20-point flurries, down 20. Let's make a flurry. Here we go. I'm super not a big fan of like guys who had 10 points in the fourth quarter, their stats when they're down 20. I just wish we could eliminate those. But I will say this. For the first 3.5 quarters or 3 quarters the other night in Sacramento, I thought the Jazz moved the basketball well. All the things that have made the offense tick up. The Jazz offense in their last 2 games against Dallas and Sacramento before last night were the second and third best offensive games they've had of the year. And so I thought we really saw some really good things from the offense in those 2 games. And then it fell apart in the final 4 minutes of the game in Sacramento to close. That was too bad. The weird things, Collin falling to the floor and Lauri dropping a rebound, but also just not a lot of ball movement. And I think Jordan Clarkson went 1 of 6 and Collin Sexton went 1 of 4 while Lauri got 1 shot. Like, that's not ideal. But those 2 games against Dallas, the offensive rating was a 117 and 118, and even the game before that was a 115.5. So the Jazz had their third, fourth, and fifth best, or second, third, and fourth best offensive games of the year in their 3 previous games to last night. I do think they're a little tired last night. Like, I'm going to give them a little bit of a break. They shoot 12 of 40 from 3. We run back and back to back. Like, right, got it. And you're physically kind of back to the compassion. But I think we've seen signs a little bit of the offense percolating back up to where it can be. And Will Hardy's always been such a good offensive coach. And I thought we saw that in the second half last night. I thought we saw the ball move again. We got caught into a lot of isolation play, and some guys just going one-on-one, and we're moving Keyonte up the ball, so that puts the ball into Collin and Jordan's hands a lot more, and then makes us a little more susceptible, I think, for the lack of ball movement, because neither of them are natural point guards, so it actually makes sense, but it's still a fact. And we got caught into a lot of isolation play and lost our bearings, and I thought when Isaiah Collier played in the second half and just overall in the second half, the ball popped again, moved again. There was better movement. Cody Williams got some 2 threes, which is good after a tough night the night before and a tough stretch. Collier does some beautiful things, throwing these strong one-handed wraparound passes to the other across the court on skip passes. And so we saw the ball pop a little bit more in the second half. I thought that, the one thing I think is really interesting about this team so far this year is that they definitely have some tough moments. But when they have the tough moments, they bounce back. Like, we did the big show last week about transition defense and how bad their transition defense was. Well, I'll do it tomorrow. They've gotten way better. So the one thing I think is becoming a signature of this team is that they fall into little, like, holes or whatever you want to call them, ruts. They usually bound out of it and get back to the way they're supposed to play. Their natural instinct might be to run it up a little bit and get it out, but then they come back the correct spot each time. And they did that last night in the second half. Trends Monday. Kyle Filipowski is living a trend. And this is why you have to be really careful in how you evaluate rookies. Even Isaiah Collier was talking about today. I'll touch on that when we continue here on Locked On Jazz. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel, the official sportsbook of Locked On, as well as the official sportsbook of the NFL. FanDuel has got a great deal for you right now. If you're a new customer, you can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place bets live on the NFL, all in one place, or the NBA. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL, official sportsbook partner of Locked On. Monday Night Football tonight, I believe, is the Texans and the Cowboys. They've got a bunch of parlays on that one. The Texans are a 7.5-point favorite. First touchdown, Joe Mixon, -170. Nico Collins, +120. CJ Stroud over-under numbers as well. All of those kind of things. So tonight, the 76ers play the Heat, and the Heat are a 5-point dog or favorite in that one. Also in the NBA tonight, we've got the Bulls and the Pistons, which is probably not high on your list of things. The Pistons are a 4.5-point favorite, though. That's why I thought that was really interesting. And kind of a marquee game. Milwaukee is a 2.5-point favorite against a Rockets team that's playing really, really well right now. And Clippers are a 4.5-point dog at home against the Golden State Warriors. That's all at FanDuel.com. I keep disappearing today, the virtual background, so we're going to turn the virtual background off for those of you that are watching on YouTube. Whoa, now wonder, I had a light on me. What is going on here today? Wow, psychedelic strangeness. Is it the sun coming in just from the side that's caused this? Wow, very strange if you're watching on YouTube. But I never think anybody wants to see, like, the hotel room bed. I always think that looks so crappy. Maybe I can fix that. Yeah, I think the sun started coming in from a little gap there and created like hallucinogenic virtual backgrounds. There we go. All right, Kyle Filipowski's fascinating me right now. He's really good, first thing. I don't know if this is possible, but literally we're watching an NBA scout him in real time. Like Kyle Filipowski's first 2 or 3 games, he came with that spin move. And then we went and played a game, and all of a sudden someone jumped on his, so he goes with his right hand. He wants to spin back to his left hand. And all of a sudden, the league took that away. We haven't seen the spin move in 4 games. Now, the coaches might have taken it away too, because he's spinning the lane, you're going to lose it. But the league might have taken it away. Second thing is, last night, they didn't guard Kyle Filipowski. They just didn't guard him. First time we've ever seen this. And he went 0 for 4 from 3. He looked really bothered by it. He's going to have to adapt to make his threes. He's going to have to be a good three-point shooter if it's going to work anyway. But it's incredible to me that we're literally 5 games into him playing, and the scouting reports are changing on a day-to-day basis. It's why you really can't view players until you're 10 games into a season. With that said, on Trends Monday today, I wanted to check in on the rookies, because I think this is pretty interesting. The rookies this year started the year about as terribly as any group of players in the history of the league has ever started out of a draft class. So the rookies started the year and truly just were awful. Truly awful. If you looked at, as of October 31st, there was only one rookie in the entire group that was averaging 10 points a game. That was Bub Carrington in Washington. He was shooting 44% from the field and 50% from 3. But everybody else was pretty miserable. There were 8 rookies who were getting 20 minutes a night. They were 2 or 3 of them were second-round draft picks. The collective 3-point shooting percentage. Keyonte George was shooting 12% from 3. Risha Shea 24%. Alex Sarr 24%. Cody Williams 18%. Stephen Castle 10% from 3. Guys just weren't getting it. Now we move forward and let's just take this month so far. We're only 18 games into the month. We suddenly have Bub Carrington, Keyonte George in Washington are both playing 30 minutes a night. We have 13 guys playing at least 20 minutes a night. We have 8 guys averaging double figures now, led by Jared McCain, who has clicked in big time, who I did love in the draft. If anybody remembers that, he was my favorite player in the entire draft. He's averaging 20 points a game, 2 rebounds, 3 assists on a shorthand Philadelphia team, but he's shooting 48% and 43% from 3. Jalen Wells, the Washington State second-round draft pick from Memphis, is playing great, shooting 47 and 37. Risha Shea is still struggling, shooting 38% and 22% from 3. Zach Edey's clicked in. He's shooting 63%, averaging 13 points. Stephen Castle's now playing well, averaging 12 points, 43% from the field and 35% from 3. Keyonte George's numbers aren't great yet, but he's playing. Alex Sarr's numbers aren't great yet, 38% and 21% from 3. Dalton Connect's playing well. Last 8 games, 50% from 3 and 50% and 43% from 3. And Filipowski is beginning to play really well. 9 points, 5 rebounds a game, shooting 56% and 29% from 3. So it's really interesting to see. Now, there are still some real struggles in here. Ron Holland, who was an early pick, is shooting 38% and 11% from 3 in the recent time. Ryan Dunn has fallen off. Reed Shepard is scuffling a little bit at 14 minutes. Bazulius has not clicked in yet. But it's just really interesting to see that. I kind of think you have to evaluate rookies in 10-game windows. Those were 2 8-game windows. But I think you really have to evaluate everyone in 10-game windows. And I think that's what we really should be doing with our players. We're pretty excited about Kyle Filipowski, but let's watch 10 games in and see what happens. All right, here's some team trends on a Trend Monday. The number 1 differential over the last 2 weeks is the Houston Rockets, and their defense is clicked in. Number 2 is Memphis. Number 3 is Orlando without Paulo Banchero, and their defense is number 1. Cleveland still has the best offense. Boston's rolling. So the best 5 differentials in the NBA over the last 2 weeks are Houston, Memphis, Orlando without Paulo Banchero, Cleveland, and Boston. Really impressive by Orlando. Oklahoma City's next. The 5 worst are Washington, New Orleans, Chicago, Philadelphia, and Toronto. And then Brooklyn. What you'd anticipate. In fact, what's really interesting to me is that the 9 teams that are probably not really competing for the playoffs or crippled by injuries in the case of New Orleans are the 9 bottom teams now. Utah, Portland, Charlotte, Brooklyn, Toronto, Philadelphia, Chicago, New Orleans, Washington. We're seeing the separation take place of the point differential of those teams. The hottest offensive teams in the league, Cleveland still crazy. Boston, New York is the 3rd best offense in the league. Sacramento, the 4th best. Dallas, the 5th, despite Luka's struggles. Think about how poor Luka's been this year. And Dallas, over the last 2 weeks, is the 5th best offense in the league. Dallas is going to be fine. They're 3-5 in that stretch. Played a lot of games. Golden State is 6th. Teams that are really struggling to score right now, Washington, Philadelphia, New Orleans, Charlotte, Portland. By the way, our offense over the last 2 weeks is 12th in the league. Will's really gotten that figured out. Best defenses in the league, Orlando, Houston, Memphis, Detroit, Oklahoma City, and then Minnesota's gotten back on track. Bad defenses so far, Washington, Chicago, Utah, Brooklyn, Phoenix, San Antonio, New Orleans, Toronto. So no big surprises there. Here's what I do think is relevant here. Milwaukee is suddenly the 8th best defensive team in the league. Dame Lillard was out for most of those games with a concussion. New York is back up to 21st offensively, but that's still not great. They're winning offensively, but that's how they're adapting to Karl Anthony Towns. Golden State, whose defense was crazy. They had all this amazing stuff going on. Their transition defense, I told you last week in Trends Monday, could not sustain, is now 18th defensively over the last 2 weeks. So that's worth keeping an eye on. They're really good offensively, but they're not holding defensively. So keep an eye on that. Those would be my big takeaways on Trends Monday for you of things to keep an eye on. The other one that's a mystery to me is why Indiana's offense has not clicked in yet. The one to keep an eye on is there's a bunch of really good offensive teams that we would think are great offensive teams that are not good offensively right now. And they're not offensive rebounding at all. So do you have to be a good offensive rebounding team to be a good offense? Now, Cleveland's the 2nd worst offensive rebounding team in the league, and they're the number 2 offense, but they're shooting at an absurd level. They're still 7 points better than league average, which I don't think can last. But Indiana, that's supposed to be one of the best offenses in the league, is 27th in rebounding. Milwaukee is 30th. They're not very, and Phoenix, who's supposed to be one of the best, is 25th in offensive rebounding. Do you have to offensive rebound to be a good offensive team at this point in the NBA? That is Trends Monday. That is Locked on Jazz. Thanks so much for tuning in. Appreciate it. Have a wonderful day. And now we will send you to the first ever national 24/7 sports channel, NBA channel, Locked on NBA, streaming, or check out Locked on NBA for its 2 editions every day.